So, hello and welcome everyone to our webinar about the Data Explorer for Neo4j. I'm Chris. I'm the lead developer for the Data Explorer here at Yworks. And today I'll show you a little bit about the Data Explorer. First, I'll give you an overview about what the Data Explorer is and how you can connect to a database and how you can explore the schema and the actual database data. After that, will show you some highlights of the Data Explorer, for example, the AI support or the web view and the new analysis and heat map feature. We round up the webinar with a Q&A at the end. So if you already have questions or some questions arrive during the webinar, you can post your questions in the chat and our team will collect the questions and forward them to me so I can answer at the end. So let's start with the Data Explorer. It's a web application and it can be used to visualize Neo4j databases. The Data Explorer is based on the diagramming SDK Y-Files for HTML from Yworks, and it's free of charge. The Data Explorer keeps your data as local as possible. So after you load the Data Explorer application from Yworks servers to your local browser, all the communication for schema visualization, data exploration, and data analysis is only sent between your local browser and the database server you're connecting to. So how do you start to go to the Data Explorer? In your browser, you just have to enter yworks.com/neo4j-explorer. And then you'll just get into the connections dialog. In this collection dialog, we have some sample databases you can connect to, but you can also open a connection to your own database. For the first examples I'll show you, I'll connect to the Neo4j lab samples. And as example database, we will use the Neoflix database. Of course, with a J in the URL, it will maybe work better. Okay, so here we go. If you first open the schema view of a database, you'll get some tutorial tips that explain a little bit about the schema view and what you can do. I'll skip this for now, but you just take your time if you start the Data Explorer and let these explanations help you with your schema visualization. So now we've got the Neo4j Flix database schema. And as you can see, there are different movies and users that can watch the movies. And if you have the nodes here in this graph, you can use different layouts, placements to have a better overview. In this case, instead of the organic layout, the hierarchic layout is a little bit better suited because in this way you can see that there are kind of movies here and videos. There are persons that somehow were in the cast of the movies and users watching them, and there are several metadata information and which language the movies and what keywords are connected to it, etc. If you select one of the node labels, you can also see in the node detail view what properties belong to these node labels. So here are ID and name, for example. And of course, the name holds true for the relationship types that are here. So for example, if I check here the cast for relationship, has some ID, character, etc. that can be used. Now, to actually explore the data of the database, there are several options to start with. If you want to just browse a little bit and get a first grip on the data, you can, for example, use the context menu here in the schema and load some random node of a specific node label, or the same holds true for the relationship types as well. Or you can just switch to the Explorer tab. Again, here is a tutorial explaining the different things you can do here. And then you can have the option, or different options how to start. You can just load some random data again, not restricted to node labels, just any random data. Here in the tab, there's also the option to input a cipher query. So if you look for something specific, you can enter your query, run the query, and the result of the query is presented here. And now you can import some of those or mark all, import all, just as you like. Another way that's quite useful is the search bar. In the search field, you can search for specific nodes. And in this case, the first step to search is to select the node label. We use the collection label here. And after that, you already get a first bunch of nodes that correspond to this node label. You can also filter these results, or you can also specify some special property, for example, the name of the collection, and enter what kind of name should be included in the collection's name. I want to start the presentation or the demonstration with the Star Wars collection. So if you enter the Star Wars search, we get 4 different Star Wars collections, but I want the first one here. I click on the import button. And as you see now, there's one node now loaded, and this one corresponds to the collection, Star Wars collection node in the database. You see, apart from the node label, there's also some data already present here, namely the name. And if you select it again in the node details, you now get the values of the different properties that are available. There's also some further information in the bottom right of the node. You see how many incoming and outgoing relationships are there in the database that connect to this node. In this case, we just want to have all nodes from this collection. So I double-clicked the collection node, and then a bunch of nodes, 20 or so, that connect to this collection are loaded. In this case, there are 8 Star Wars movies in the database, and they are loaded all together. If I go on this way and I realize, okay, I just double-clicked one Star Wars movie and now there are just a bunch of nodes that I'm currently not interested in, then I also have the option to use the undo feature and undo the last operation, in this case, the loading of the connected nodes that were close to the Star Wars node. Now, another way to explore the neighborhood of a node, apart from double-clicking and more specifically targeted, is if I right-click on a node, I get some entries which sort the neighborhood either by the node label type. So for example, here at the movie, there are language, country, etc. Node label types around. Or I can also check for the incoming and outgoing relationships, also sorted by their type. For example, if I want to know which keywords are connected to this movie, I can click here and I get an overview over all the 16 keywords that are connected. In this case, we'll choose the Death Star keyword. So if I load this one, I'll see which of the Star Wars movies were all connected to the keyword ***. And in this case, to get a little bit nicer view, I'll also choose the hierarchical layout again. So I have all the movies here at the left side, and the collection and the keyword is on the right side. As I explained before, these nodes already have some default visualization templates. First of all, you see, or you also have seen in the schema, that each node label has been assigned a color to it. And this color also is again used for the default templates. If I want to change the styling of some node labels, I can here go to the style property panel. Again, there's a tutorial for the styling. And I can, for example, just change the color that's used. So here in the schema node colors, I can, for example, look for the movie color and say, I just choose a little bit darker yellow in this case. What's also possible is to add even more styling to the node. So currently there's just the name of the movie included, and maybe I just want to have more information directly on spot if I look at it. That can be done by assigning custom node templates to the nodes. So if I select, for example, a node and add a template, you see there's another template added, and because I have selected the movie before, it's also already assigned the movie label. Now I can open the template editor. The template editor is a special page inside the Neo4j Explorer that allows me to modify the templates that's used for, in this case, the movie nodes. You have different default elements like rectangles and ellipses, but also you can add images here. And what's quite useful as well is you can bind your different data properties. So if, for example, the movies, as we have seen before, has several properties. Let's say, for example, the release date. And we can just here drag one of those properties over to the template. And you'll see here's the value of the movie name, of the movie release date included. And maybe we also want to have the title as well. And here on the right side, you can modify these properties even more. You can, for example, change the font or use different coloring. And especially the connection to the actual data is done by data binding. So in this case, this label is binded to the release date tag of the node properties. This way, each movie node that's later displayed will display its own release day, and in this case, its own title. An even easier way to have a nice template is to use the AI support feature of the Data Explorer. And before I move on to generate the AI template, I just want to come back to the presentation which I showed you before for the data flow. Because the AI feature, as you can probably guess, will need some more data from you. So to create, for example, nice node templates, the AI needs to know a little bit what information is included in the schema, what properties are available for a specific node. So there will data be sent from your local browser to the OpenAI, and then it will generate some Cypher query or code that's again used by the Data Explorer application. Before that happens the first time, you have to acknowledge that it may use the AI features. So if I click here on the generate template, you'll get a notification that tells you what kind of data will be sent to OpenAI. We have also further links that you can read. And only if you agree that this data may be sent to the OpenAI, you can start using this feature. In this case, as I said, specifically the node properties that are available are relevant for the movies. Though, as you see, the result already looks quite nice. We have not only the properties correctly binded, for example, the title, or also the release date or an overview, but there are also some nice images added to it. Of course, not always the corresponding template the AI creates is perfect. Sometimes you have to adjust a little bit something, or as you see, it's just too long, or you want to remove some of those or replace. You can do that now, but if you're fine with it, you can just apply this template. And as you see, this template is already used for all movie nodes we have now here in this collection. And you can use the AI feature not only for styling your different node templates, but also for the exploration of your graph. And to do this, you can click here on this button, which opens some prompt input. And if you, for example, want for the nodes that we have already, for the movies we have already here, we want to know which actor played in the last 4 of these selected movies. So I've selected the movies, added the prompt, and now when I click, I first again get a consent prompt that explains a little bit the feature itself with some examples, and also includes what information is sent to OpenAI. And if you acknowledge that and start the query, after a short while, you see that there are the actors added here. And as you can see from the number of the relationships, all of those have at least connections to 4 of the movies. So that works actually quite fine. I just explained to you how you can style the nodes types, or the node labels, but there are also styling options for the relationship types. So for example, if I want to have for the cast 4 relationships a different styling, I can again in the style panel go here to the relationship styles and choose the cast 4. And now I can here, for example, use different line types, some dash type or dotted type or different thicknesses. I can also decide whether I want to show the arrows or not, or use a different color for it. For example, to better distinguish it from other relationship types. And for those relationship types that have properties on them, there are even more possibilities for the labeling. In general, we can always decide to disable the labels for the relationships if it's only important that there is a connection, but it's not that important which one. We can just disable it. And if such a relationship type has some properties, you can also select one of the properties. And in this case, there's also a binding for the corresponding label that shows the value of this corresponding property. So you see, for example, which person had which character in the corresponding movies it played in. You can also check whether the data is consistent, or if there are some entries that differ and maybe should be equal and should be correct in the database. Well, that's everything about the styling and the default exploration for now. I also showed you the AI feature, and now I want to show you another feature, which is a map visualization, which is especially targeted for the use case that your Neo4j data has some geolocations added to it. So as the Neoflix database doesn't have that, we use another sample database, which is the FinCEN database from Neo4j Labs. This database has quite a small schema. You have some entities, which can be some finance institutes, countries they operate in, and some filings they use. And in this case, to be able to use the geo information of some of the nodes, you can check in the node details view in the properties which location has the corresponding geo information and mark it to be used as map coordinates. In this case, the entities and the countries each have some geolocations, while the filing doesn't. Now, what does the map view look like? If we switch to the Explorer again, I'll use again an AI prompt to load some information. In this case, I'm interested in entities that are available in at least 3 countries. So if I run this prompt, you can see there have been some banks found, for example, the Barclays Bank or the Deutsche Bank AG. And now all I have to do is, in the layout styles, I go over to the map layout. And in this map layout, you see that a map is included in the background, and all nodes are mapped to the corresponding geolocations of their property. The map can also be zoomed in and out, and you see the node keeps their size so that you can always read the entries correctly. Now, as you see in this case, many of these countries and entities may have similar geolocations and overlap each other's. The other layout styles usually try to avoid overlaps of nodes, but with geolocations that's not always possible. And that's why the Data Explorer has a special feature, which is the Wonderlands. And I can toggle on and off this Wonderlands here at the top right side. What does the Wonderlands do? If I move the Wonderlands over an area where many overlapping nodes are there, you see that those nodes are pushed away to the side, so each of them can be easily read. And each node also has a connection and a geomarker to the spot where it is. So you keep the information where the corresponding node belongs to and what its location is, but you also can use this view to see all the details of the corresponding nodes. That's quite nifty if you have the geolocations and want to get a better overview of those nodes. Now, as a third use case, third highlight feature, I want to highlight the analysis in heat maps. I talked before already. For this, again, we will go back to the first database, the Neo4j database, but we'll use another sample graph. So I remove the ones I used before. And this time I want to get an overview over movies that have been released between 2010 and 20. And I also want to have the genres connected to them. Of course, there are only the movies in the database shown. There would be usually more, but for a use case, that's enough. So you see, there were several movies found, and although different genres are in, sometimes a genre is shared between several, and some genres are only used by one of them. To have a better connection, if some were used by multiple, I'll go back to the organic view in this case, as I think it's a nicer overall picture for this information right now. Now, if I have some graph loaded here, I can start running analysis algorithms. In the top right, you have the analysis section, and there are 2 sections for analysis. The first one runs on the database. So not only is the nodes already loaded into the Data Explorer are considered, but all nodes in the database as well. While in the second section, the algorithms are run on the visible graph, only those nodes already loaded. And those are algorithms implemented by Y-files, which, for example, calculate difference and centrality measures. In this case, we want just to know what node degree the different nodes have. So to many other nodes are they connected in the database. And if I select the node degree analysis, you see as first that there's a label added to the bottom of the node. And this is the actual value of the node degree that has been found out on the database. And what you also can see is that automatically a heat map is added as well. And this heat map is quite low for those entities that have just a few nodes connected in the database, while others get quite big highlighting. That's just quite nice to have a quick overview, and on a spot you can glance which ones are highly connected and which are less important. You can not only use the heat map to show the analysis results, but you can also use it if you want to know more about different property of the nodes and how they are spread around the nodes in the graph. For this, we again go to the styling and the property mapping sections. So, for example, we want for the nodes to know a little bit more, for the movie nodes, sorry. And the average vote is actually quite a nice or good information that we want to base the heat map on. Because we want to know which movies get a low vote or a high vote. As target attributes for the property mapping, there are different options. One would be, for example, the size. So lesser voted movies get a smaller size, while better voted ones get bigger. But as you see in this case, if we want to add the additional information, the target size is not really a good way to represent those mapping. Better in this case would be a heat map. And you can see here that there are nodes with just a smaller heat map. And in this case, if I want to have the real information about the vote, I can have a look at the node details. So it got a vote about 6.3. And this movie, for example, is even lower, 3.4. While we see some highly highlighted ones that even have an average vote of 10. So again, at a glance, you can see which are movies that are ranked high or low. Now, if you have several heat maps at once, it can be confusing, because in this case, we still have the node degree heat map, which is more useful for the genres, because they tend to have much more degrees than higher degree than the movies. But for the movies, we maybe want to have the average vote as well. What we can do to distinguish those better is to configure the heat map used for the movies. And this is done by going to the configure style mapping. And this has several options. First of all, you could also reverse the gradients, so that movies that are ranked or voted lower get a more highlight, while the other ones are just a little bit highlighted. For example, if you are interested in the worst movies ever. Other than that, you can also change the gradient color. So instead of the multicolor one that's used per default, you can, for example, say I want to use a red color for my average ratings. So again, you can see that there are nodes with just a little bit gradient and with a quite strong gradient, which corresponds to the differences in the multicolor one as well. And if you just say, okay, maybe I'm just not interested in the node degree anymore, I have now only one, but I prefer the multicolor ones again, I can just reset the color to the default again. So this is the heat map feature, which I think is quite nice to get a nice overview. And before I finish the presentation, I'll give you a short recap what I covered in this webinar. So we began with the Data Explorer. I just shortly explained how it works and what is based on the Wi-Fi's library. And after that, after loading and connecting to a database, I showed you the schema and the information you can already have in the schema when you explore it. After that, we covered the exploration of the real data. Again, there are many ways to find nodes, to explore the neighborhoods, or also if you have geolocation, use the mapping feature as well. We also dived into the styling for the node label styles as well as for the relationship types. And I also showed you how the AI can support you as well in styling the node labels as in exploring your database. Finally, we also covered the analysis features and the heatmap feature that can be used to get a better grip on the data you have. Though that were all the things I wanted to show you. Now we can start with the questions. Any questions you already had or that came up during the session. So I see already the first question, and it's again about the data exploration. I'll just switch back here to the Data Explorer. The question is, can I select somehow which node labels I want to see and hide the others? Though as in the schema, I showed you there were lots of node labels, and if you say I'm not interested in, for example, all the keywords or the languages, then I can, in the schema, for example, click a node and go to hide label. So we have a filtering feature which allows you to hide either whole node labels or also relationship types. And you could even use a more specific filter that only filtered nodes with different properties. And if some of those are filtered out, they are not shown in the exploration at all. And also, if you look at the neighbors that are available, you can see that now there are no key relationships or neighbors with keys, key tags assigned here. And the second question is about exporting. The question is, can I export the graph I just browsed? And yeah, there are actually different options for that. We have here in the menu the export the graph option. And first of all, you have different ways to export it to a file, either as SVG, PNG, or PDF. And you can also export it to GraphML, which is an XML format specially targeted for graphs. And apart from these file exports, there's also the possibility to export this graph to our Wired Live application. So I'll just give it a try in this case. In this case, the Wired Live is opened, the data is sent, and you first have to confirm that the source is trustworthy where you loaded the data from. We want to acknowledge that, and you see now we have all the nodes, even the template we designed is available, and from here on you can all the features that Wired Live presents you from different layout versions. There are much more layout options here. available. You can also modify the diagram, for example, if you want to use an image afterwards with more or less nodes or add additional information, etc. And last not least, you could also export it to the app generator. And the app generator is actually another application from Yworks that helps you build your own Y files for HTML application. And if you export it to the app generator, it will consider, for example, the styling again of the nodes, also the connection properties to your database if you have entered them and saved them. So you can easily explore here the graph, use the templating to have nice styles, and after that, export it so you can use it later on in your own application. So another question I see are about the source code. So if you're the question is, when licensing Y files for HTML, is the source code of the Data Explorer included? And I have to say, actually, no, the source code is not available if you evaluate or license Y files for HTML. There are plenty of source code demos available. So all of the features here, many more features are covered in nice feature demos where you can use the code. There are demos that show how to connect to a Neo4j database, how to use different styling, etc. So there's a lot covered. And if you really are into creating your own data exploration application, there's also the possibility to license the Data Explorer source code. If you're interested in this, just contact our sales team and they give you more information about this way. Okay, so it seems there are no more questions left. So if nothing more arrives, then I'll thank you very much for participating. I hope it was quite informative for you, and I wish you fun with using the Data Explorer, and of course, happy diagramming.